Okay, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining myself, Surend Dayal. I'm the CEO of Magia Solutions, and Barry Hiern, who's the Director of Product Management for the Oracle Digital Assistant based here in Australia. We're going to talk to you today about how chatbots can be used for industry. And one of the industries that we're looking at is the utilities industry, but equally we have implemented chatbots across a range of other industries, including higher education, government and retail. We'll show you some examples across those industries today. So, welcome and thank you, Barry, for joining me.
The obligatory Zoom, are you on mute? Thank you for having me here.
No worries, it's good to see you again, Barry. Okay, just a little bit about Magia to begin with. I won't spend too long on this, but so you know who we are. We are an Oracle specialist partner. We specialise in cloud solutions from Oracle. We've been a platinum partner since 2017, and we're also recognised as a certified excellence implementer, which we're quite proud of, because that is judged not by Oracle but by our customers and Oracle's customers. And I think we're the only one in Australia who has that. We're fully Australian owned and operated with staff in all major Australian cities. We do work in the region as well, outside Australia, so New Zealand and broader into Asia Pacific. And in fact, one of the customers we're going to talk about today is an offshore customer for us. We made the pivot to the cloud really back in 2012 because it was pretty clear that was the way of the future. And with 8 years of experience under our belt, that's just picking up momentum all the time. And in the last fiscal year, we grew 60% year on year, largely on the back of Oracle's growth in software as a service. We can deliver any Oracle SaaS application. You can go to our website to see them in detail. So that includes the ERP suite, so ERP, HCM and SCM. And also the CX suite. And today we'll be looking at one of the platform as a service offerings, the digital assistants, but it's very common for those to be integrated with the other SaaS products, in particular the CX suite. And Oracle itself has done a lot of integration there. So one of the big areas for that is the integration between digital assistants and Oracle Intelligent Advisor, for example, which is a natural language rules engine that lends itself very well to a conversational interface. From a professional services perspective, we offer the full range from implementation through to managed services, and we can equally do technology and business strategy for any prospective customer. Okay, so getting on to our topic today, when is conversational good? In our view, you need to have some important information that a customer can access through the conversational interface. Things like, what's my lead balance? How do I do something? What am I eligible for? Similarly, transactions are good. Help me apply for something, update something for me, take me to checkout. And finally, interaction, particularly with the devices. So being able to upload a photo or submit a document, place an order. These are all things that that lend themselves to a conversational interface. So the main caveat is it's only worthwhile if it does something useful. And therefore, the other key thing we see is that ease of integration to source systems is very critical. And Oracle has certainly done a lot of work there to enable that integration and make it smooth and make it relatively easy for a partner like us to implement for a customer. We think there are key elements to bringing these things to life. The first one is figuring out which channel you want. So do you want Facebook, Slack, mobile applications, WeChat, any of the conversational interfaces that particularly Gen Z uses? And I think you'll hear from Barry a bit about some of the drivers for opening up this product avenue from Oracle. And then the second thing is, well, what's the intent? What do you want to enable with the conversational interface? A chatbot with no purpose is kind of like a robot without a home. So again, that comes back to having useful information that can be surfaced through the chatbot coming from host systems of record. Okay, Barry, I'll hand it over to you here to tell us a bit about all of the work that Oracle's been doing to make these digital assistants worthwhile.
Thank you for that. Let me just pull up the slide and make sure I'm connected to the right thing. Okay, so thanks for that, Surend. Yeah, so what we're going to be introducing today is Oracle's digital assistant. But first of all, as I said, I've been in the sort of IT industry now for sort of since the dinosaurs. And what we've seen, obviously, as people moved from the traditional client server, is every 10 years or so, we've had a very significant shift in how users interact with a company or interact with their sort of personal information. And obviously back at the sort of turn of the millennium, we had the web, and everything was about building web pages. Everything was about building web pages. And we really did get to the point where we almost had too many web pages to deal with. It was very hard to find the answer. And then along in 2008 or whatever it was, the iPhone came along, and suddenly it was all about apps, and everyone needed an app. And it's like, I need a mobile app for my customer. I need a mobile app to do this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, what do you want it for? Oh, I don't know, but I need a mobile app. And we're now moved to the next generation, which is really this idea of the conversational interface. And as we'll see, one of the downfalls in mobile apps was the sheer number of apps. But from a conversational interface, people were rushing to build one of these in the same way as they rushed to build mobile apps, and in many ways ran into similar issues. But when we look at it, why do people look to conversational interfaces? Well, there's a number of reasons why people see these as particularly useful for customer support and employee support. And first of all, there's no app to download. It's not something where I have to proactively go to the App Store and download the app for something that I hopefully wouldn't necessarily need. So in the case of needing to report an incident, I probably wouldn't download the app just so that one day a year I would actually need it. So the advantage of chatbots is they're using apps that people already have, or they're using interfaces that are already available, be it things like Facebook Messenger or WeChat or Slack or whatever, depending on whether it's sort of inbound or outbound. The interface is already there, you're just taking advantage of it. So in other words, you're exposing the organization to many more channels by effectively, rather than have the user come to you, you've gone to them. And it's using a technique that everyone has been doing ever since they were small children, which is basically being able to have a conversation. So rather than having to learn an application or learn a mobile app, effectively the advantage of a conversational interface is it's really there to understand what the user's trying to achieve and then hence respond accordingly. The downside, of course, is with conversational interfaces, there is lots of different ways you can ask a question. And this is particularly true if we're dealing with some of the earlier attempts, the series, the Google Assistants of the world, where it was really set up to answer a specific question. And if it didn't understand that question, it pointed you to a website with many, many links to say, well, I can't answer that now, but here's hundreds of links that I found that might or might not be any use to you. So one of the downsides of that first generation was really the experience where it was not about the conversation, it was about answering a question, which didn't give you, to Surend's point, it has to do something useful. And if it can't take that next step, it's not useful. And one of the things that really makes it difficult is the fact that as humans, as we speak to each other, we don't actually speak in a linear fashion. So even if I had a process, I don't necessarily go A, B, C. I might actually go A, B, C. Oh, another thought occurred to me. I'd ask a different question, and then I'd go back to the original question with the assumption that the person I'm talking to hasn't completely forgotten the question I had posed in the first place. So this non-linear is one of the things that really makes or breaks a lot of these conversational interfaces, because people won't stick to what's effectively referred to as the happy path. So let's start by sort of differentiating. We talk about digital assistants and we talk about chatbots, but really what is the difference? What makes a digital assistant, if you like, the next generation of chatbots? Well, as I said, if we looked at the likes of Siri, they were designed to answer a specific question and have natural understanding of that question. Chatbots were about a use case. So for example, I would start a conversation and I would build a chatbot around a particular use case or a particular task. So this might be my service desk chatbot, or this would be my billing inquiry chatbot, or my employee leave application chatbot. So effectively, you ended up with a chatbot that was really designed around a single use case. And the reason behind that was very simple. The state of the artificial intelligence was such that if we try and put too much into the one bot, it gets confused. So it's not able to work out, am I talking about topic A or am I talking about topic B? So what a digital assistant really is that second generation of chatbot, where the digital assistant effectively acts as a master bot or a super bot that sits in front of these individual use case bots that we refer to as skills. So effectively, each one of those hexagons represents a standalone chatbot that understands its own business domain, that understands the conversation required to achieve a specific goal. The digital assistant, on the other hand, sits in front of that and is able to route to the appropriate use case based on the incoming question. So this is where, as I said, we'll introduce the Oracle Digital Assistant. And as I said, the digital assistant is one of these master bots that allows us to have different skills that are agnostic to the back-end application, whether it's an out-of-box application, a bespoke application, a third-party application, effectively build a, for want of a better term, a smart Lego block that self-contains all the information about that need for the use case. And we simply plug them together to create one of these master bots that is accessed from a single point of contact. So effectively, even though we may have multiple use cases, from a user's perspective, it's a single experience, regardless of the type of question they ask. If I'm asking a business question, it'll fire the business use case. If I'm asking a leave balance question, obviously, as an employee, we're able to bring that back in the same conversation flow. But as I said, the thing that really will differentiate a digital assistant is also this ability to, if you like, go off topic, to change the process you're doing. So as we were talking about before, the bot needs to do something. But if I'm going through a process, so for example, here we have a new hire who needs to order a new laptop. So they're ordering the laptop, they're halfway through the procurement process, and it's like, oh, when do I actually start again? So in this case, we should be able to jump over to the other question, answer it, and then come back to our original task and complete it accordingly. So in other words, that non-linear approach, or a non sequitur, that allows us to effectively jump between thoughts that the user's having in a more basically humanistic way. But when we design a bot, there are actually different types of interface that we might want to implement. And as we'll see in a minute, there are different things we might want to plug in to achieve that. So a transactional chatbot, where we're going off and getting things like account details or when's my bill due and things like that, are effectively FAQs, but they're FAQs about my information. So they're very personalized, and we need to be able to go into the back-end system of record and get that. Conversely, in a classic FAQ, the answers are pretty much static based on what the question is being asked by the end user. So in that case, when we talk about FAQs, we're really looking at global information where, based on the question, we can go and get the appropriate policy or whatever from our knowledge base. Likewise, there are many cases where you need to have specific guided conversation in order to pass a business rule. So if I'm applying for a new phone or applying for a new account, there's going to be very specific questions that as a user I need to be asked. And hence this is where the concept of guided conversation, which where Intelligent Advisor, and we'll talk about that briefly, is able to effectively become part of the conversation. So we can look at a conversation being user-driven or application-driven. So in this case, the user may ask a question. Once we've worked out what they're asking for, the application may take over and subsequently guide that conversation to achieve the ultimate goal. But realistically, you're never ever going to be able to build a bot that does everything. And one of the things that, again, that can make or break a successful customer service chatbot is do you have the ability to effectively hand over to one of your call center agents if required? And we'll look at that in a bit more detail. But if we look at today's customers' needs, there's really broken down into three areas. Instant access to their information, rather than leave them on hold for 45 minutes or so with their call is important to us, let's keep them happy by giving their information straight away. Likewise, make sure they have access to the appropriate information for the question they're asking and for who they are. Are they a customer? Are they a VIP customer? Are they an employee? Let's make sure the answer is right. And then, as I said, in terms of building their accounts, building things, having that personalized, guided approach to actually make sure that they're quickly and easily achieving the goal that they're trying to achieve by coming to your site in the first place. So obviously in our case, that instant service is really where Digital Assistant comes in. But if we're also wanting to have an FAQ, we can take advantage of various knowledge bases to have that sort of standard policy questions available to us so we can surface those. And as Surend mentioned, Intelligent Advisor allows us to do guided conversation. So if we look at it, the various components make up this digital sort of triumphant, if you like, where we have base knowledge, whether that's sort of policies or standard FAQs, you have the conversation flow, and you also have guided conversation. And the three components fit together to build up this sort of overall sort of conversation flow that allows your customer to access the right information that they're after and do it quickly. So how do we build these things? Well, especially when we're looking at transactional applications, Digital Assistant and Oracle has taken a very different approach to many of our brethren in the industry by looking at how we use artificial intelligence. So rather than assume that most companies have data scientists available to them to build up the AI or understand things like TensorFlow and the various models you need to actually build an application, Oracle's taken the approach that we will build the appropriate AI functionality into the use case. So in the case of Digital Assistant, the artificial intelligence is all about natural language processing and conversation design, and it's built into the engine. So that way, when we come to design a conversation, it really becomes a business function. It's not an IT function, because the business understands the types of questions that a user is going to ask. They understand the types of sort of utterance that is going to go with the domain, and hence are able to build that up as a sort of almost like a meta design. Whereas when we get access from the back end, we still need IT in there to say, how do I get to my customer management system? How do I get to my billing system, etc. So IT, in this model, IT handles the integration side, but really the business and the knowledge designers build out the conversation flow, because they're closer to what the customer is going to expect and the types of utterances or the types of examples that are going to be needed. So the way we build it is that it is a very declarative model. So from a user perspective, they'll go in there and effectively, what are the user goals that the user came here in the first place? So in this example here, which is actually a banking example, they may be looking for an account balance, or I need to do a transfer. And then we represent how that user might ask that question. So how much money I have is indicative of I want an account balance. Once we can have that, we can also tie that to important bits of information that we might need to capture. So my account number, my account type, am I a sort of, in the case of a phone network, am I a broadband? Am I a landline? Am I a mobile? So basically, the type of information you can define is again defined declaratively with examples of how people might ask for that. And then having got that, the business can simply sit there and ask questions and see whether they've got the right information there. And that way they can retrain it or change the behavior of the bot in real time by saying, if I ask this question, what's the outcome? But the other side of the coin is the conversation itself. So in this case, what we have is the ability to define a conversation flow based on, if you like, almost conversation by example. So as a business user, you would come in and say, well, what did the end user ask? What would the bot respond? What would the user then respond to the bot? And basically build up that conversation, he said, she said, and use that as a guiding factor for how the conversation would be. And in this case, obviously, what we're really looking at is the happy path, which is the successful goal. And the engine itself will then take into account if the user goes off topic. But as I said, there's always going to be a situation, no matter how good or bad our bot is, that we're not going to be able to answer everything. And that could be simply because we've got the wrong, we haven't got the right domain in our bot. It could be that the user asked a question that wasn't in the system, or it could also be a purely personal thing. It could be that the end user is upset, the end user didn't understand the bot, or simply that they just don't like bots, so they want to talk to a real person. So one of the things that can make a customer support chatbot more effective is that ability to hand over to a live agent as part of that conversation flow, and make sure that the agent understands the conversation that the user has had with the bot. So in the case of Oracle Digital Assistant, we actually allow this in two different ways. And the use case really comes down to the nature of your help desk environment. So one of the areas is allows us to place the bot effectively in front of your help desk. So in this case, the bot starts the conversation with the end user, And only if it detects that there is a need for an agent, whether that's implicit or explicit, does it effectively escalate to your call center. So in this case, obviously, we're looking at, say, Oracle Service Cloud, but it could also be other call center environments. So in this case, you're escalating and you're effectively handing control over to a live agent that takes over the conversation at that point. So in the first case, it's human talking to bot, and then it becomes human talking to human simply by transferring or escalation from the bot itself. So within this, as I said, it has the, again, this is a very declarative approach. We allow you to say, where is my help desk? Who do I connect to if I hand over? And then that way the bot is able to hand over to the appropriate back end. And as I said, whereas out of box, it's available for Oracle Service Cloud. We also support third-party systems like Zendesk, Salesforce, Genesis, etc., where we have the framework that allows you to plug that in if you so choose. The other side of the coin is really to take advantage of the functionality of your help desk itself, which if I've built specific routing rules into my help desk where the user comes in and they're asking about a particular issue because you've gone through a triage, then you may want to route to a specific either the bot, so initial questions go to the bot. Important users, say this is a VIP customer or something like that, they may get routed to a human regardless. But in this case, assuming, say, the majority go to the bot, effectively the digital assistant is acting as an agent inside the help desk environment. So you're still using, unlike the previous version or the previous option where you were using any channel available to the bot. So if you wanted to expose your help desk through WhatsApp or WeChat or Facebook or whatever, you could do that. In this case, you're using the standard help desk client, and the bot is actually sitting behind it and is able to transfer as required. So I said it has the advantage of using all the knowledge that you may have built into your help desk environment, and the digital assistant or the bot is really taking on the sort of the ground noise question, the repetitive questions that are easily answered. Rather than waste the time of an agent, you can help have the bot take them on and process them and only transfer to an agent if it's absolutely necessary. Once you've built your bot, how do you know you've actually built the right thing? And this is an area where analytics becomes extremely important. Being able to see the types of questions that your users are asking, and have you actually built the right bot? So if I build a perfect bot that is answering questions A, but we're finding that 80% of our incoming requests are about Q, then what that means is we need to modify or change our chatbot very quickly to address that. So getting real-time view of the types of questions people are asking, where are they coming from? Are they coming from the website? Are they coming from, say, Facebook? Are they coming from, for example, WeChat? So in this case, we can see where they're coming from. And if we see the majority of people are using a particular channel, we can also optimize the bot to be more effective on that channel. But as I say, from the bottom left-hand corner here, we can also see what were the top goals that someone came to the bot for. So what were their top intents or their top goals? How many of them actually succeeded? And how many of them actually sort of left or abandoned? Again, it gives us the option to optimize that conversation to make sure it's useful for our end users. And that extends to how often did we really need to escalate to an agent? So if I'm looking at my call center, obviously deflection has an immediate impact on return on investment. Obviously, call centers cost money both from an agent salary viewpoint, but also telephony and all the other costs. So if I can deflect even 30–40%, then I have a significant bottom line hit. So being able to see real time how many were deflected, but also how many then needed to go back to an agent anyway, we can actually work out the true value that the conversation is bringing to the picture. But moving forward, we've talked about the conversation, but the next generation, if you like, of interface is ultimately going to be no interface. And this is where obviously voice interaction comes in. And what we're seeing, obviously everyone has a mobile phone that has Siri or Google Assistant, or they may have Google Home or Alexa or things like that. But the function or the problem with those environments from a business perspective is where that processing takes place and who owns the data. So Oracle has introduced voice capability that is very much designed around two main factors: security and also understanding your business. So obviously, if I'm using a Google Home or something like that, every time my user asks about their account number, it's going to a third party, and that third party has control of or logs that conversation. In the case of Oracle, the voice capability here is within your environment. It's within your instance of the bot. So it never leaves this environment, and in fact, doesn't even record the actual outcome or record the message. So this means that you have much greater control over things like personal identifiable information because it stays within your security domain. But the other side of the coin really has to do with terminology. It has to do with domain. So when we talk about automatic speech recognition, there's the concept of open domain. Hey, what's the weather like? So that's something that is realistically a general conversation. But if I was to ask, who's the key account director for one of my key accounts, key account director might be fine. But here, for example, in Oracle, key account directors are just colloquially referred to as CADs. So who is the CAD for our particular sort of utility company that we're talking to, say, for example, Guam. So in that case, CAD, if I was to ask one of these open domain people who a CAD is just as likely to come back with Canadian dollars. So this is why it's important that we have an environment where you can effectively teach it new words that make sense in your business domain. And speaking of customers, we have a significant growing base. And as you can see, there's a number of large utility companies in there, be it both electrical, as well as things like gas and oil and things like that. So in terms of growth, using it both for customer service, but obviously large corporations have large numbers of employees. So being able to give your employees access to the information that they need to successfully be an employee makes it easier for them too. So it's not just outward bound. Inward bound can have a significant impact on how employees are able to access their own information, be it HR information, be it job function information. So just to give you some ideas here. So for example, a good example would be ComEd, which is part of Exelon, and they're using the chatbot as a way of servicing their customers, to give them access to things like billing information, being able to do reportage of outages, etc. And looking at the broader company, which is Exelon, we can see that they've had a significant impact through deflection and been able to support more customers than they were directly through the call center. So effectively, they're getting a 30% reduction in the cost there simply by being able to have those customers go to the chatbot rather than sit on the phone waiting for the customers to ask about their bills, asking about the fact that they don't have electricity or whatever. Likewise, we can see in Japan, the Tokyo Gas Company had a similar thing. They went through a social media approach using Line, which is one of the dominant social media platforms in North Asia, and looking at, rather than being tied to when the call center was open, really looking at going for the 24/7. And again, by having that deflection level, they were able to make significant reductions in cost simply by servicing those customers immediately rather than having to go through a call center. And obviously, we have others like telephony phone companies. And in fact, one of the biggest chatbots around phone lines and is actually based here in Asia Pacific. The Philippines long distance telephone company, it uses exactly this approach to deflect from their call center and have had a massive move to using the chatbots as a way of allowing their customers to get access to it straight away. Okay, so at that juncture, I will pass you back to Surend.
All right, thank you very much, Barry. Let me share my screen so I can talk. And thanks very much for both the product background, but also some of those international examples. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about local examples, things we've built with Oracle for local customers, and then give you some views on how you can actually get started if you want to do one of these things. So just going to pick 3 example use cases locally that we built. The first one is Dhl Australia, and we implemented for them a full electronic commerce solution, and it's to allow the pharmacies in particular and the hospitals that they supply to order and buy and track everything online. And that's a pretty important function in Australia, particularly at the moment with COVID, because these are mission critical supplies. If a hospital doesn't get the things it needs, then people can die. So the big thing that the bot does here, that the digital assistant does here, is provides tracking and tracing. So it's like, where's my package? And customers can see where their package is up to and do all of that through a conversational interface. Or equally, they can do it through the normal website, but the conversational interface has been very popular for them. And in fact, I was talking to a pharmacist recently who just said, look, it's like night and day. Now we can do it all digitally. We can see what's happening. I can go on my mobile phone and just check through a chat interface where things are up to. So they love it. The end users love it, of DHL. I can't show you that one because it is kind of secure access it's kind of B2B, although it's almost B2C because the pharmacists are very small businesses. The second one, which I will show you shortly, is from the University of Tasmania, and they've actually named their digital assistant Mumford, and it provides information on fees, personal details, results, etc. And you can upload photos and documents or share your location with the digital assistant. And for them, the big driver for that is student engagement. So that students can very easily interact with the university through a simple channel of choice. And particularly for that generation, Gen Z, chat is one of the main ways they interact with each other. So it's a really nice way for them to interact with the university. And then the third one is the Guam Power Authority. So for them, it's transactional information. How much was my bill? When's it due? And they can then get routed to a transaction. And in this instance, it's integrated, and this is one of the real strengths for Oracle, particularly in utilities. And I think a number of the people on this webcast may be from that industry who have Oracle's utilities software. So the system of record on the back end is an Oracle system for their utilities bills and managing everything to do with that business. So that's where the information, that's where the digital assistant is getting the real information from to help an end customer. So let me just bring up Mumford, if I can work my screen properly. Here we go. So this is, you can see here, Mumford is the chatbot intern who's joined the team, And these are the main topics or skills, if you like, in Barry's terminology, that Mumford can help with. So I can ask a question like, I would like to enroll. And Mumford comes back and says, okay, I've got some things here. How do I enroll? I'm having problems enrolling. What do I enroll in? Let's say I want to know, how do I enroll? Then I get asked, well, what do I want to enroll in? Do I know what I want to enroll in? If I don't, then it can give me some guidance about that. Am I looking for an elective or experience and engagement unit? I'll say, yes, I am. And then I get taken to a unit search. And if I follow that link, it takes me off to that part of the website. So there's a whole range of things, as Barry was saying here. It's like multiple bots have all been aggregated into Mumford for the students to interact with. The other thing that I can do is I can share my location with the bot, and so I can get context-sensitive information to where I am. Now, I'm not in Tasmania at the moment, so that might make it a little bit difficult for Mumford to help me. Allow that. Do that again. Okay, yeah, I'm kind of out of the boundary for Mumford. Usually it's helping students kind of near the campus. The final example, the Guam Power Authority here, and I'll just briefly show you the screen. I can't do a lot with this because I'm not a customer of the Guam Power Authority, but you can see here, I think the nice thing here is it's integrated on their Facebook page, and you can ask questions like, when's my bill due? How much do I owe? And then if you're a customer, it basically just gets your account details and provides you that information from the host system of record. And for these guys, it's reduced the call waiting times by about 45%, because I think Barry mentioned it earlier. One of the big things with this is deflecting calls and deflecting things from the call center, so that a lot of those basic inquiries people can just do themselves now, and then it's only the more complex ones that the humans in the contact center have to deal with. And then for Mumford, the other thing to point out here is the systems that sort of sit behind that. They have Oracle Service Cloud, so you can do that switching between a human and a bot as needed for whatever the end user is looking to get. Okay, so if you want to get started with these, we at Magia, we've got kind of 3 starter packs, essentially 3 ways to get going, and they're really not as expensive or difficult as you might think to get a digital assistant up and running. The first one is a starter pack, and that is basically a proof of concept level project where you're looking to test some basic applications of the technology. You get one environment. The key thing really is the integration points. How many back-end systems do we need to integrate to? You get 3 medium complexity intents and a single channel. So it could be like Facebook or the web, for example. That starts at about 20,000 and it's live in 2 to 4 weeks. The next level up, the professional. So if you still want to get live quickly and kind of maximize your time to value, you get 2 environments here, still 1 integration point, 5 medium complexity intents, so a few more, 2 different channels. So you can go like Facebook or Alexa or the web. And that's about $30,000 and you're live in 3 to 5 weeks for that one. And then the largest one is what we'd call the enterprise, and that's where you've got more complex requirements and processes. For this one, you get 2 environments, 3 integration points, up to 10 intents, and multiple channels, up to 3 channels. And this is around about $50,000, live in 4 to 6 weeks. So any one of those 3 is pretty fast to get going. The biggest one is sort of 4 to 6 weeks. The shortest one could be 2 to 3 weeks. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. Thanks for listening. If you want to get more information, please reach out. There's my LinkedIn details there. You can visit us at our website or send an email to info@magiasolutions.com. We can take questions if anyone wants. Just ping them through the chat interface. I'll give people a minute or 2 if they want to do that. Yes.
Feel free to ask questions. We don't bite.
Yes, we are. We are friendly.
No, so if you're interested, say for example in the ComEd one, you can actually go directly to their website and have a look at their bot there. But as I said, one of the big things with any chatbot is that deflection. So if you can make or prevent your customers sitting on the helpline and get their answer straight away, you end up with happier customers, and in many ways you end up with happier call center agents because they're focusing on the issues which really allow them to show their professionalism. Answering how do I reset my password is probably, if you've asked that question 80 times a day, might become a bit repetitive. So that's the sort of thing where the bot can take over.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, very good. It looks like people aren't keen to ask questions over Zoom. That's fine. Feel free to send questions through to us on any of those channels there. But we think it's a very interesting offering from Oracle, and we're very well equipped to help people implement it. Oh, here we go. We've got one for you, Barry. How does the chat deal with the complexity of the language? That's a great question.
Okay, so again, that's one of the big things between the sort of early chatbots and the latest generation of chatbots. And let me just bring my video back up again so you can see me. So the NLP, or the natural language processing for the conversation, is basically using neural net. So it's a deep learning model. So the nice thing here is it's able to, when we train it, we don't have to give it huge number of examples. We can start with a very low number, and the NLP will allow us to understand what the question is, or do what's referred to as intent determination. So once we know the goal of the user, we can then look for the specific information that we need to find. So rather than sort of look at every possible use of a word, we determine what the user's after first, and that automatically scopes any other information that we need to look for. So in terms of the language, it's not like the early generation NLP that was rule-based or using grammar. This is a machine learning model where it's using your utterance or your question as an example, and then it uses that deep learning to work out ultimately what the user's trying to ask. Okay, if we want to integrate with WeChat Messenger, is an additional cost? Obviously, from a viewpoint of, so Facebook Messenger is out of the box. WeChat integration does require obviously a WeChat business account. So the cost is.
We can do those certainly. Yeah. In those starter packs, basically you get 1 with the starter, 2 with the professional, and 3 with the enterprise, and you can choose the channels for those. Yeah. But there is a little bit of work, as Barry says, for the ones that aren't out of the box. Then we just have to do a bit of integration work to get them up and running.
Okay, and in fact we currently have about a dozen sort of channels directly available, but then as Surend was saying, we can expand on that to have other channels. So another question here. What are the scenarios where a human agent will be needed? That really comes down to, as I said, 3 main areas. The first one is you may not have designed the bot to answer the question. So if they came in and well-designed bots will take random questions, and we can look at random questions in 2 different ways, or in fact 3 different ways. Is it a question that has absolutely nothing to do what we do as a business? So as a utility company, if people came in and said, oh, I'd like a pepperoni pizza, pizzas are nice, we don't want the bot to understand pizza because it's not our business domain. So in that case, we just want to ignore those. you've got the next scenario where the question is part of your business domain, but not something you've currently trained the bot in. And the third one is it's actually part of your business domain and part of the bot, but it's not an example that the bot knows about. So in other words, that becomes a training issue. So when we look at when do we transfer to an agent, we only want to transfer to the agent basically on 3 areas. One, it's not something the bot is actually set up to answer. 2, the user didn't understand the answer they got. So for example, the bot may have answered correctly, but for various reasons, the user basically didn't understand. And you get into that I don't understand loop. So after say, oh, I don't understand, or the user keeps on asking the question again and again, it probably means that they don't understand the response. So in that case, you're really looking at an implicit transfer to an agent. The other one, which is actually very easy, is where the user does it explicitly. Partway through the conversation, they simply say, oh, you're stupid, I want to talk to a human. So in which case you have the ability to transfer directly to the user as part of the conversation. And the important thing is that the agent understands the conversation that the user's had with the bot to that point. Because you don't want a situation where they've spent 5-10 minutes asking questions of the bot and then have the agent ask those same questions again. So the agent has to be able to see the context of the conversation so they can add value rather than necessarily just repeat what the bot's already done. So to answer your question, where a human agent's needed is where the user didn't understand, where the bot is not set up to answer that requirement, or from an emotional viewpoint, some people just don't like talking to bots and really do want to talk to a real person. And frequently that's the case with older generation where they like talking to a real person. So in that case, rather than upset them, allow them to talk to an agent and do it directly.
Yeah, I have to say that's quite a common one for me. when I'm using a bot, quite often I'll get to a point and go, right, I need to talk to a human now. I think the key thing, as Barry said, is you get all the context. So when the human operator comes on, it's not like they're coming in cold, they get the conversation to that point.
Okay, there's a couple of other questions there. So can the bot trigger the creation of an incident, or does it have to be routed to an agent? No, absolutely. So the bot can create the case in the back-end system and can also store the conversation. So you can get a transcript of the users. So even if I didn't go to an agent, I could have that conversation with the bot pushed into my call center and actually have a case and have the case ID returned to the user in case they did ring back. But yes, you can actually take the transcript and have that stored in the case system as well. So the long answer is yes. What steps do I need to take to get started for chat if I've already licensed? Yeah.
Basically, if you've already got the license, that's great. Just read this here, get in touch with us, drop us an email, or reach out to me on LinkedIn. We can get you started, Narendra.
Okay. Any other questions?
All right. Having a look. I think we're good. Well, thank you very much, guys. And yeah, some good questions at the end there. So, and thanks very much, Barry, for joining us today. That was really educational.
More than welcome. As I said, if you do have questions after the fact or they occur to you, please do reach out to the folks at Magia or your local Oracle team. But as I said, the digital assistant is state of the art. This generation, this routing, this humanistic approach is very much sort of the head of the curve, if you like, in AI in the industry.
Great. Cheers, guys.
Okay, we'll give you back 4 minutes of your day.
Absolutely. Well timed.
Thank you again.
Thanks, guys.